On today's Rebel's Edge, markets deep sixth the DeepSeek as traders choose calm and Nvidia starts to rebound. Polaris pops on an earnings beat as customers continue to crave their power sports products. And nat gas is down almost 5%, mostly because of seasonality and welcomed warmer weather across the country going into the spring. All that and more on today's Rebel's Edge.
Guess what? That is not Pete Najarian on the other side over there. That's Marc LoPresti. And in case you hear a lot of things you might hear at a big rubber chicken dinner or something like that, they are setting up for dinner, rather lunch, here in Miami at Uncorrelated Miami. So it's correlated to noise. And yep, that's Marc. This is me. Marc got us booked in here for keynotes tomorrow, and it's going to be fun, Marc. And we're going to talk about Puerto Rico, too.
Yeah, that's right. We're hosting a roundtable luncheon to talk about investment opportunities in Puerto Rico, folks considering taking advantage of moving down there and the programs that are available. And really is becoming the leading alternative investment conference both for investors and for alternative fund managers. We're here to address both of those contingents. And yes, John, we're also going to be speaking at Uncorrelated Puerto Rico, which I believe is March 29th and 30th. But if you go to just put in Uncorrelated Miami into your search bar, the website will pop up. You'll see the dates and locations of other events that John and I are going to be speaking at with this incredible group. And a big shout out to Jeff Marcus, Peter McGarr for putting this together. We are, as John said, at the inaugural Uncorrelated Alts event in beautiful, sunny, and warm, finally, Miami, Florida.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a lot better than it was a week ago, Marc, when they had temperatures in the 30s.
I was here, John. Somebody actually posted to Instagram what looked like snow falling at about 1 o'clock in the morning in front of the Fontainebleau. I'm not sure that that's been confirmed, but if it's the case, it would have been the first time that Miami saw snowfall since, I think, the 70s.
Or at least since the 80s when snow was on the tables rather than in the air.
Different kind of snow, Doc.
Different kind of snow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Macro Minute. What do we got?
Let's go Macro Minute. Let's talk about $1 trillion wiped out from U.S. tech stocks by DeepSeek. And Marc, I was going back and forth today with our friend Liz Clayman. She did a great job on her podcast. I encourage all of you guys to check that out, the Liz Clayman podcast. But she was talking about DeepSeek with some of the best insight that I've actually heard anybody in the media talk about it. And yeah, some people will go for this cheaper Chinese version of ChatGPT and all the rest of them, Meta's, Google's, Microsoft's, all of that, OpenAI, but some people will not. And so perhaps a little too much was taken off yesterday, but it will compress the margins, don't you think, Marc?
I got so many problems with this story. We should call this segment What Grinds My Gears. I forget what TV show that's from. So let's just take a second and go over this thing, okay? Number one, when is it that we decided that we believe everything that the Chinese government says? Remember that public company that was making recycled tires, and one of the Hindenburg-like teams went over there and found it was 3 dudes that were retreading something in the back of somebody's backyard? So that's the first problem I have with this story. The second problem I have with this story is it's not news. It was first leaked, and some of this was leaked as early as December and certainly confirmed as early as last week. I think this was an excuse for a momentum-driven correction. Remember, our analyst, the great Steve Kalasian, called the correction on Cocktail Hour on Friday at 1:10 live Eastern time. Okay, we're going to actually be circulating that clip for those of you that maybe don't believe it, but he did. And in no point in time did he say, yeah, I'm seeing a sell divergence in the RSI. And oh, by the way, it's DeepSeek. No, it's not DeepSeek. I think this was a lot of the talking heads on some of the networks that we don't appear on anymore, putting a face to a story that was an otherwise market correction, and that's what I think went on here. So I'm not buying it. There you go. What grinds my gears is Peter Griffin.
Nice. Well, Peter Griffith, is he Family Guy, Mark?
God, come on. Yes, it's Family Guy, John. Come on.
Well, folks, we always hit fantastic futures. I'll make it quick. The 10-year is back down under 4.58%. That's a good thing because we were up over 4.8 just a little bit ago. So the numbers are coming down. That means people's mortgage rates will be coming down. That's my fantastic future, Mark.
Yeah, my quick hit is I'm watching nat gas. It's down almost 5% today. It is kind of a seasonal turnover getting into from the February contracts to the March. The end of the winter being anticipated to be a little bit warmer, thank God, than previously anticipated. And this, most seasoned traders recognize the seasonality of a turn a little bit more dramatic than nat gas traders would normally expect on this seasonal turn. That is my fantastic futures for today's episode, John.
All right. Well, because Mark and I are going to be speaking at an event, folks, we're going to go through it as quickly as we can and still give you all the good stuff today. So I'm going to say quickly, Starbucks, baristas are now going to warmly greet you again. And as you've already heard us say, they are not keeping those bathrooms in the Starbucks public. It's only for customers that are paying customers. And I think that will help because a lot of people probably weren't comfortable going into Starbucks, Mark, when there's people basically using it as their shower. I think Starbucks is wise to back off on some of those decisions that were made under the previous administration.
Yeah, we'll see if this company rolls back some of their other questionable decisions and HR policies that will leave alone here. I guess they dodged a bullet, John, because one of the main industries that was going to be hit, I think, most significantly by the very punitive Colombian tariffs that President Trump, of course, imposed when the plane of migrants was rejected and sent back. Of course, the president of Colombia then sent his own plane, which was a very interesting turn of events, but they would have gotten crushed on what would have happened to the cost of cocoa. So they dodged a bullet there. I'm not a Starbucks fan, John. That's so I'm probably the wrong guy to ask here.
Probably right there with you, Mark. Well, what about Nvidia? So rebound, but it's tough to rebound from that, huge $100 billion loss that they booked yesterday with a 17% decline, Mark. But they are coming back. The DeepSeek uses their H800 chips, which is the one that people were concerned about security in the U.S. So they said, you know what? We're not going to ship the big ones over there to them. But they've apparently been able to do it with the lesser chip, and that's going to press margins, Mark.
Yeah, John, the other thing that I also had to mention, it's of course part of the Nvidia story, going back to my grinds my gears segment, is I had to question the timing of an announcement like this from the Chinese. I mean, President Trump, one of the first executive orders was, of course, declaring an energy emergency related to the explosion and expansion of AI. Now he's got the Manhattan Project, right, which we're going to be releasing a research report about that next week. It's about a week delayed. There's so much going on in the news, we had to keep updating it. And the president is saying very clearly, look, you're going to make the United States the dominant leader in AI software, AI-related hardware, chips, and things of that nature. So I'm not going to bet against this against that backdrop with all of the resources that are going to be provided. I think Nvidia is going to continue to be the beneficiary of that. A lot of the smart traders that I were talking to, John, said, "Oh, damn, this thing's on sale." Picked it up, and that's part of what catalyzed the rebound. Not as much of a rebound as I would like to see, but I think it's just the beginning.
I agree with you, and I think that again, their margins are going to be compressed. That doesn't mean the stock's sale. It means the people that were smart enough to buy it on that dip below 117 yesterday were pretty lucky.
Yeah.
All right. What a Polaris. PII is the symbol here. It's power sports. It's everything from jet skis and so forth four-wheel drive vehicles for people, big farms, things like that, those ATVs and all that sort of stuff. Well, sales fell by 24% year on year. That's never a good thing. And these guys have been benefiting from the COVID lockdowns, Mark, where people just bought a bunch of these, whether it was for water sports or other, and apparently they don't need to buy them as often as Polaris would like. And so the guidance was weaker than expected.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, John, talking about watching what consumer trends and where they're spending their money, and do I need to get the newest and greatest? Part, I think, the company's problem is the stuff that they make tends to last, right?
Yeah.
We have a friend here that's attending the conference that's in the oil and gas industry out in the Plain Basin. He's got lots of these things, and I can tell you, if he was here, he would tell you, I don't need a new one every year, because if you maintain even just a little, they start up every time you turn the key. But going to be continuing to see if other companies in that sector experience the same in terms of declining consumer demand, just from the perspective of trying to understand where the trajectory is of discretionary. And of course, they have discretionary and could argue non-discretionary, because they have the recreational side of the business, but also farm equipment and industrial equipment as well.
Well, stock hit a new 52-week low today on this news, and that was basically $51 a share. That's half of where the 52-week high is. And we did have unusual in this. We had strong unusual activity. People were buying puts before the drop when it was nearly $55 a share, as it trades down below 52, all the way down to about 51.10. Those puts became worth a lot more. So once again, if you're a subscriber, you're a happy camper today.
Yeah, sizable trade, 7,500.
Well, how about Synchrony Financial, Mark? We'll wind with Synchrony. Say they expect lower net revenue for 2025. Again, when you, and we're not saying people should lie, but when you are news like this, there's only one direction that stock's going to go, and that's down. And that's exactly what Synchrony did, dropping by better than 8% earlier today, Mark.
Yeah, and you wonder, they are consumer focused. They're in the credit card business. Obviously, declining interest rates generally bad for companies like that, because of course they can charge less. But I wonder, John, to what extent, we've been talking about this for a long time now, to what extent does the continued all-time high print after print of consumer credit card debt, the increasing charge-offs, you see companies like this one and others increasing their reserves for charge-off. Of course, look into a little bit more tea leaves on this one. That is one of the things that hit their bottom line hard, and in fact, it appears that what had set aside and what we're expecting in terms of charge-offs, that's delinquent that they decide just can't collect, that exceeded their expectations and actually had a lot more than they were hoping for. And I think that's going to continue, particularly for the smaller companies like this one.
Well, Mark, and to give you where it's due, you've been saying that for a long time about Affirm, about Klarna, the buy now, pay later stocks. Consumers were basically tapping anything they could other than adding to something that might hurt their credit score, because allegedly, I have to say, those buy now, pay later stocks do that. They don't hurt credit score, but you can only carry so much debt anyway, folks. Unfortunately, the government is lucky enough to have a different boss than you and I have. All right, let's dive into just one. Mark, lead us off into Pete's Red Zone Sports, because Pete's here, but the head coach, Mr. LoPresti, is here.
Yeah, so John, I'm curious, who do you think the top 5 players are here for the NFL draft?
Well, I discussed this, Mark did, with Pete earlier today, folks, and everybody knows this guy, Abdul Carter. He's an edge rusher from Penn State. He is a beast. Edge rusher means, folks, the kind of guy that can provide both leverage and speed from the outside to get to the quarterback. This guy has been doing that his whole collegiate career. So I'd say Abdul Carter, Mark, followed by that pair from Colorado, Travis Hunter, who goes both ways. Travis is deservingly, I thought, the Heisman Award winner. He is a receiver and he is a defensive back. He would play over 100 plays games.
Jeez.
Because, he's just that good. And Shedeur Sanders is the quarterback on that team, Colorado Buffaloes. And I think those two probably go in the top 5 picks, Mark. I don't know where for sure because of trades that might go on. Those are quite generational talents, but Travis might be.
What about this kid, Taylor Warren, John? I mean, he's like a triple or quadruple threat, tight end, running back, wide receiver. That's pretty unusual to play that many positions. Is this kid kind of a phenom? Do you think that he'll make it in the top 5?
Well, you're exactly right. I think that is a generational player, even up there with a Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
The reason I say it, Mark, he's 6'6", pro mid, which means he's 6'7", because I remember, hey, Mark, they pressed down pretty hard on your head, and I didn't have any hair, so I was 6'2", measured, and maybe close to 6'3" when I'm not pro measured. But this guy's 6'6", 260 pounds, can run probably in the 4-4 category. He can be a tight end, can be a slot, he can be a wide receiver. He is a freak show of an athlete. And I think people are going to see him play on Sundays next year and say, I wish I would have been a big fan of Penn State. I could have watched this guy every day, every Saturday at least.
That is definitely true. Let's one last question as we wrap Pete's Red Zone Sports. A lot of people say Saquon Barkley might be the top free agent contract signed ever. 6 years with the Giants. What do you think? Who could actually come close to this guy in that category?
Nobody in free agency has had an impact, in my opinion, Mark, like this guy. Saquon, I mean, when he was a freshman at Penn State, I saw him do a power clean of 390 pounds. He is one of the strongest football players alive. And great attitude, loves to play the game, cheers on his teammates. Yeah, this was a fabulous acquisition for Philadelphia. If they win the Super Bowl, this will be a major reason, the acquisition of Saquon Barkley. And if they don't, well, it'll be the Zebras once again screwed every other team that plays Kansas City, Mark.
I love it. Well, John, it's that time of the show where we have to get into the shameless publicity and the plugs for the upcoming events that we have. I'm going to start off this Thursday at 4 o'clock. We're going to be hosting a webinar for the Rebel Setup featuring Steve Kalajian. And John, Steve is on a hell of a run this week, having made that unbelievable market call on Friday, predicting with great precision what happened yesterday morning. Lots of folks in the Rebel Setup sending us texts and messages and emails telling us how much money they made listening to that. So we're going to be putting all of Steve Kalajian's superpowers on display in a 1-hour Rebel Setup webinar. We're also going to be announcing the launch. We've got Rebel Setup. We've got Rebel Setup Pro. We're announcing the launch of Rebel Setup Elite. But to find out what's involved in that particular service, you're going to have to watch the live webinar. So I'm going to ask producer Jared to pop up a QR code and a tile for that. John, I also have to remind our viewers about RebelCon 2025. It's coming up fast. QR code and tile, I'm sure, will be popped up by producer Jared. This is, of course, at the MGM Grand, the 22nd of March. It will be day 4 of 10X GrowthCon. We're expecting 6,000 plus people there. It'll be the 10th anniversary of that event. We'll be on stage with Grant Cardone and a host of other luminaries from a variety of industries. And then, of course, on that 22nd, we will be treating our traders to a live trading event. We're going to be sharing our insights and dropping lots and lots of knowledge. We just announced that we'll be joined once again by the great Liz Clayman, Charlie Gasparino, Bryn Talkington, and a bunch of other financial celebrity guests that we will be announcing. So, John, I think until tomorrow, that does it for us for the Rebel's Edge.
Does it for us, folks. We appreciate all of you joining. Please tell a friend about the show. And we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m.